The grand meeting hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with tension. Hundreds of alien representatives sat in rising circular tiers, their worried whispers filling the massive chamber. At the center of the room, a hologram showed their worst nightmare, a growing darkness that was eating its way through the Orion arm of the galaxy. Council leader Krull stood tall, his metallic scales reflecting the dim light of the chamber. His species had conquered 1,000 worlds through pure strength, yet now he felt helpless. The dark anomaly had already consumed 3 solar systems in the past month alone. The latest attack fleet has failed, he announced, his deep voice carrying across the chamber. 300 warships, our finest warriors, lost to this thing. He waved his armored hand through the hologram, scattering the image of the void-like anomaly. The gathered representatives erupted in shouts and arguments. They were the proudest, strongest species in the galaxy. How could they be defeated by what looked like nothing more than a dark cloud in space? Commander Vex, a towering insectoid warrior, stepped forward. Then we must send more ships. We will crush this threat with our combined might. His mandibles clicked in excitement at the thought of glorious battle. We tried that, growled Admiral Vex, her fur bristling with frustration. Her feline features showed obvious disgust as she continued. Every direct attack just makes it grow larger. It feeds on our weapon's energy. The hologram updated, showing the anomaly's growth rate. What had started as a small dark spot in space now stretched across multiple star systems. Its edges pulsed with an unnatural purple glow, seeming to mock their failed attempts to destroy it. An elderly representative from the Logic Collective spoke next, his artificial body humming quietly. Perhaps we should consider asking the humans for help. The chamber fell silent for a moment before erupting in laughter. The humans, Krull asked, his voice dripping with scorn. Those cautious little creatures who refuse to even engage in proper combat. They spend more time running tests than fighting. Admiral Vex raised her paw for attention. They are cowards, yes, but they are cowards who have survived every major crisis they faced. While we fight our enemies head-on, they hide behind their computers and sensors, studying everything before they act. That's not the warrior's way, Commander Vex protested, his wings buzzing in agitation. They even fled from the Glory Games last cycle, claiming the competitions were unnecessarily risky. The Logic Collective representatives' eyes glowed brighter. Yet they are the only major species who haven't lost any ships to the anomaly. Perhaps because they haven't tried to attack it at all. Krull paced the central platform, his heavy footsteps echoing. The humans were indeed strange. When offered the chance to prove their worth in glorious combat, they usually chose to run tests instead. When challenged to demonstrate their strength, they talked about unnecessary risks and cost-benefit analysis. The hologram pulsed again, and a new alert appeared. The anomaly had just consumed another mining outpost. We are running out of options, Krull finally admitted, each word seeming to cause him physical pain. Our bravest warriors have failed. Our strongest weapons have failed. Perhaps it is time to try something different. Admiral Vex nodded slowly. The humans have a research vessel nearby. The Prudence. She spoke the ship's name with a mix of confusion and disgust. What kind of species named their ships after such a passive virtue? Krull looked around the chamber, seeing the desperate faces of his fellow council members. Their pride demanded they fight on, but their duty to protect the galaxy demanded they consider all options, even cowardly ones. Send the call, he ordered, his voice heavy with resignation. Tell the humans we request their assistance. He almost choked on the last word. But make it clear, they are to investigate only. When the time comes for glorious battle, our warriors will handle that part. As the message was sent, none of the council members noticed the Logic Collective representative's quiet amusement. Sometimes, he thought, the most interesting solutions come from those who prefer not to fight at all. The research vessel Prudence slipped out of faster-than-light travel with barely a ripple in space. It was small compared to the massive warships gathered around the Council station, and its smooth, sensor-covered hull looked strange next to their heavily armored neighbors. Captain James Walker stood on his bridge, watching the massive Council station grow larger in their main viewport. His crew worked quietly at their stations, running system checks and gathering initial readings. No one rushed, no one shouted. Everything happened in the careful, organized way that humans preferred. "They're hailing us." First Officer Robert Miller reported from his station. His voice was calm, professional, and "they seem angry about it." Walker nodded. "Put them through." Council Leader Krell's massive form appeared on the main screen. His metallic scales gleamed under the harsh lighting of his command center. "Captain Walker," he growled, trying to hide his distaste. "Your assistance has been requested." "We're honored to help," Walker replied simply. He ignored the warrior's tone. Getting upset over poor manners wouldn't help solve the problem. "We've reviewed the data you sent. Our initial analysis suggests several possible approaches for studying the anomaly." Studying. Commander Vex pushed his way into view, his insectoid features twisted with frustration. "We didn't call you here to study anything. We need solutions. Action. Glory in battle." Walker kept his face neutral. "With respect, Commander, we can't solve a problem we don't understand. Our first step will be to launch a series of long-range sensor probes and—" "Probes," Vex interrupted. "You're cowardly machines. We've lost 12 battle fleets to this monster. What can your tiny probes do that our mighty warships couldn't?" "Survive, hopefully," Walker answered. He gestured to Dr. Anna Thompson, who stepped forward with her datapad. "Our probes are designed to gather information without drawing attention. They're small, use minimal energy, and can—" "Enough," Krell cut in. "You have 3 solar cycles to show progress, human. After that, we do things our way." The transmission cut off. Walker turned to his crew, who were already busy at their stations. No one complained about the deadline or the Council's attitude. They had work to do. "Dr. Thompson," Walker called, "begin probe deployment. Standard search pattern, but keep them at maximum safe distance for now. Miller, coordinate with the science team. I want continuous data analysis. If this thing so much as hiccups, I want to know about it." The crew moved with practiced efficiency. Within hours, a network of small probes spread out around the anomaly's edges. Each one was barely larger than a human hand, designed to observe rather than engage. From the Council station, alien warriors watched with a mix of confusion and contempt. Their own ships were massive, bristling with weapons. These tiny human devices seemed pathetically weak in comparison. "Look at them," Commander Vex muttered, watching from the station's observation deck. "They hide behind their toys while real warriors wait for battle. Disgraceful." Admiral Vex stood beside him, her tail twitching thoughtfully. "Yet their toys are still intact, while our mighty warships are space dust. Perhaps—" "Don't say it," Vex snapped. "I refuse to believe that cowardice could succeed where courage failed." Back on the Prudence, Walker studied the first readings from the probe network. Each screen showed different aspects of the anomaly: energy readings, particle analysis, spatial distortions. His crew worked methodically, building a complete picture piece by careful piece. "Sir," Dr. Thompson called out, her voice carrying a hint of excitement, "I'm seeing something interesting in the quantum signature readings. It's faint, but there's a pattern." Walker moved to her station, examining the data. A small smile crossed his face. Sometimes the smallest details held the biggest answers. While the mighty warships of the Council races had charged in hoping for glory, his crew would solve this puzzle the human way. Carefully, methodically, and most importantly, safely. "Send out the next wave of probes," he ordered. "Let's see what else this thing can tell us." The Prudence continued its work, ignoring the impatient warriors watching from their station. They might call it cowardice, but Walker knew better. In space, There was a very thin line between bravery and foolishness. He'd rather be called a coward than lead his crew to a glorious but pointless death. Dr. Thompson stared at her screen, her eyes wide with excitement. 2 days of careful data collection had finally revealed something extraordinary. She double-checked her findings before calling Captain Walker to the science lab. "Look at this pattern, sir," she said, pointing to a complex wave of energy signatures. "It's not random at all. The anomaly isn't just consuming energy. It's trying to transform it." Walker leaned closer to the display. The lab around them was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. Unlike the noisy, crowded command centers of their alien allies, the human science lab was calm and orderly. "Transform it into what?" he asked, studying the patterns. "That's the interesting part." Thompson brought up another display. "These energy patterns match old terraforming signatures. Very old. I think we're looking at ancient technology gone wrong." Before Walker could respond, the lab door slid open. Council leader Krell ducked through, his massive frame barely fitting through the human-sized doorway. Commander Vex followed close behind. 2 days, Krell growled. 2 days of hiding behind your tiny probes. Where is your progress, humans? Walker gestured to the screens. "We've made a significant discovery. The anomaly isn't a natural phenomenon or a weapon. It's a damaged terraforming system, probably thousands of years old." Vex clicked his mandibles in dismissal. "Nonsense. It's a monster that devours worlds. We've seen it." "No," Thompson said firmly, pulling up more data. "Look at these energy conversion patterns. It's trying to transform matter and energy into something else, but the process is broken. Instead of creating, it's just consuming." Walker pointed to another screen showing the probe data. "See these repeated patterns? They're like computer code, but corrupted. The system is stuck in a loop, trying to complete its original mission but failing." Krell's metallic scales rustled as he shifted impatiently. "If what you say is true, why did it grow stronger when our mighty fleets attacked it?" "Because it's trying to use any energy it encounters to complete its mission," Thompson explained. She kept her voice calm and clear. "Your weapons just gave it more fuel, more resources to consume in its broken attempt at terraforming. Then how do we destroy it?" Vex demanded, his wings buzzing with agitation. "We don't," Walker said simply. "We need to repair it, or at least stabilize it." The alien leaders stared at him in shock. Repair their enemy? It was completely against their warrior nature. "Impossible," Krell roared. "We do not negotiate with our enemies. We do not fix them. We destroy them." Walker held up a hand, pointing to a new set of readings. "Look at these patterns. The system is trying to communicate. Those energy pulses we detected, they're corrupted distress signals. It's not our enemy. It's a broken machine asking for help." Thompson pulled up a 3-dimensional model of the anomaly. "If we can understand its original programming, we might be able to stop its expansion, maybe even reverse it." More theories, more cowardly hiding behind screens and numbers. Vex buzzed angrily. "While you play with your data, more worlds are at risk." "Better than throwing away more lives in pointless attacks," Walker replied calmly. "We've lost enough ships already. Let us try our way." Krell looked at the screens, then at his warrior companion. The human words made sense, even if they felt wrong to his warrior spirit. "You have one more solar cycle," he growled finally. "Then we do things our way." After the alien leaders left, Thompson turned to Walker. "1 day isn't much time. Then we'd better make it count." Walker tapped his communicator. "Bridge, this is the captain. Launch the next wave of probes. Full sensor spread. If this thing is trying to talk to us, we need to learn its language fast." As the Prudence's crew continued their careful work, the alien warships waited impatiently in the distance. 2 very different approaches to problem solving, about to be put to the ultimate test. The humans' cautious methods might look like cowardice to their allies, but if they were right about the anomaly's true nature, That caution might save everyone. The deadline came too soon. Captain Walker watched from the Prudence's bridge as the Council's war fleet assembled. 500 ships formed a massive attack formation, their weapons charging with enough power to destroy a small moon. "They're going to make it worse," Dr. Thompson said quietly from her station. "All that energy. The anomaly will consume it all." Walker nodded grimly. "Council Leader Krell, please reconsider," he said over the communications channel. "Our data shows this will only feed the anomaly's growth. Enough of your cowardly warnings." Commander Vex's voice crackled through the speakers. "We are warriors. We will destroy this threat or die trying." "That's what I'm afraid of," Walker muttered, watching the fleet move into position. He turned to his crew. "Move us back to minimum safe distance. Record everything." The Prudence retreated to a safe observation position as the massive alien fleet began their attack. Energy weapons of all kinds lit up space: plasma beams, quantum torpedoes, and weapons humans had never even seen before. The combined firepower could have cracked a planet. For a moment, it seemed impressive. The anomaly's purple-black surface rippled under the assault. But then, exactly as the humans had predicted, things went horribly wrong. "Energy readings are spiking," Thompson reported, her fingers flying over her console. "The anomaly is absorbing everything they're throwing at it. Growth rate is accelerating." Walker watched in horror as the dark void began to expand rapidly. The nearest warships tried to retreat, but the anomaly's pull had grown too strong. One by one, massive battleships were dragged into the darkness, their energy weapons only feeding its growth. "By the stars," Admiral Thex's voice came over the general channel. "Fall back. All ships, fall back." But it was too late for many of them. The proud war fleet was in chaos. Ships collided in their panic to escape. Others fired their weapons in desperate last stands, only making things worse. "Miller, start calculating safe escape routes for the surviving ships," Walker ordered. "Thompson, use our probe network to map the anomaly's expansion. Let's at least help them retreat safely." The Prudence's crew worked quickly, sending escape coordinates to any ship that would listen. Some of the warrior races were too proud to accept human help, choosing instead to fight until the end. Others finally put aside their pride and followed the humans' guidance to safety. When it was over, more than half the fleet was gone. The anomaly had grown to nearly twice its previous size, now threatening several inhabited systems. Council Leader Krell's face appeared on the main screen. His metallic scales were dull with defeat. "How many ships did we lose?" he asked quietly. 287 destroyed, Miller reported. Another 45 severely damaged. The anomaly's growth rate has increased by 180%. Silence filled the communication channel. The mighty warrior races had thrown their full strength at the problem, and they had only made things much worse. "Perhaps," Krall said finally, each word seeming to cause him pain, "we should have listened to your warnings." Walker didn't waste time on it. "I told you so. The situation is worse now, but not hopeless," he said. "While your fleet was preparing for battle, we finished analyzing the anomaly's communication patterns. We think we know how to talk to it." "Talk to it?" Vex's voice was hollow with disbelief. "After what it just did to our fleet." "What your fleet just did to themselves," Thompson corrected gently. "The anomaly is still just trying to complete its original programming. If we can understand it properly." "Then do it," Krall interrupted. "Your way. No more attacks." He looked around at his shattered fleet. "We have lost enough ships to glory for one day." Walker turned to his crew. "Launch the communication probes. Start broadcasting the signal patterns we decoded. Let's see if we can finally have a real conversation with this thing." As the Prudence began its careful work, the remains of the alien fleet retreated to a safe distance. The warrior races had finally learned a costly lesson. Sometimes the greatest courage is knowing when not to fight. The main laboratory of the Prudence had become the center of operations. Captain Walker stood surrounded by holographic displays showing the probe network's data. Council leader Krull and the other alien leaders watched silently, their earlier mockery replaced by desperate attention. The anomaly is an ancient terraforming system, Dr. Thompson explained, pointing to the central display. It was designed to transform dead worlds into living ones, but something damaged its core programming thousands of years ago. Instead of creating life, it consumes everything to fuel its broken transformation process, Walker added. He gestured to a complex pattern of energy waves. These are its attempts to complete its original mission, but it's stuck in a loop, trying the same failed process over and over. Admiral Thex stepped forward, her fur still ruffled from the recent battle. How do we stop it? We don't try to stop it directly, Thompson said. Instead, we guide it, like redirecting a river rather than trying to block it. Walker nodded to Miller, who brought up a new display. We've designed a network of energy-dampening fields. They won't try to contain the anomaly. That would just make it fight harder. Instead, they'll create paths of least resistance, channels that guide its energy consumption in safe directions. Running away again, Commander Vex muttered, but there was no real criticism in his voice anymore. Not after losing so many ships. No, Walker said firmly. We're being smart. Fighting an enemy isn't always about hitting it as hard as you can. Sometimes it's about understanding what it wants and finding a way to work with that. Thompson brought up another display showing a massive network of small devices. These are modified versions of our probe design. Each one will generate a small energy field. Together, they'll create a pattern that the anomaly's programming will recognize as familiar. Familiar how? Kral asked, studying the display. They'll mimic the energy patterns of a successful terraforming operation, Thompson explained. Right now, the anomaly keeps consuming energy because it thinks it's failing. We're going to show it what success looks like. The alien leaders looked skeptical, but they had no better ideas. Their mighty weapons had only made things worse. How long will this take to set up? Admiral Thex asked. 3 days to manufacture and position all the devices, Miller answered. We'll need help from your remaining ships to cover enough space quickly. Krell nodded slowly. You'll have it. Every ship that can still fly will assist. The next 3 days saw an unusual sight. The mighty warships of various alien races carefully positioning tiny human devices in precise patterns around the anomaly. The warriors who had once mocked human caution now followed their instructions to the letter, maintaining exact distances and minimal energy signatures. Field network is at 60%, Thompson reported on the third day. The anomaly is already showing signs of responding. Its energy consumption patterns are shifting. Walker watched the displays carefully. The massive void that had swallowed so many ships was starting to pulse in a different rhythm, matching the careful pattern they had created. Look there, he said, pointing to a new reading. It's trying to communicate with our network. The original terraforming protocols are activating. What if it doesn't work? Vex asked quietly. What if it breaks free and grows even stronger? Then we'll try something else, Walker said simply. That's what humans do. We don't believe in glorious last stands. We believe in keeping trying until we find what works. The alien leaders watched as the human crew continued their careful work. They were starting to understand that what they had called cowardice was something else entirely. It was patience, wisdom, the courage to take things slowly when rushing in would only make things worse. As the last devices moved into position, Walker looked at his crew. Start the synchronization sequence. Gentle power-up, just like we planned. Let's show this old machine how to do its job properly again. The energy-dampening network was almost complete. Thousands of small devices floated in a complex pattern around the anomaly, each one pulsing with gentle light. On the Prudence's bridge, everyone held their breath as the final synchronization began. Power level stable, Miller reported from his station. The anomaly is responding to the pattern. Growth rate dropping for the first time since we discovered it. Dr. Thompson smiled as she watched her readings. The old terraforming protocols are activating. It's starting to recognize our network as part of its original programming. Captain Walker allowed himself a small nod of satisfaction. Slow and steady was winning the race. But just as hope began to rise, alarms blared across the bridge. "Energy spike in Section 4. Miller shouted. "One of the main control nodes is failing." Walker moved quickly to the main display. A whole section of their carefully placed network was flickering, its pattern breaking down. Without that section, the entire plan could fall apart. "The anomaly is reacting to the disruption," Thompson warned. "It's starting to break free of the pattern." On the council station, the warrior races watched in growing panic. "Send in the rescue fleet," Commander Vex demanded. "We can buy them time with a final glorious charge." "No." Walker's voice cut through the chaos. "No more sacrifices. Miller, activate backup pattern Alpha. Thompson, start power redistribution through the secondary nodes." The human crew moved with practiced efficiency. While the alien leaders watched in confusion, the Prudence's team implemented contingency plans they had prepared days ago. "You knew this might happen?" Council leader Krell asked, his metallic scales reflecting the emergency lights. "We planned for everything that could go wrong," Walker explained, his eyes on the displays. "Humans don't believe in leaving things to chance, especially not in space." "Backup nodes responding," Miller reported, redirecting power through alternative pathways. "But the main node is still failing," Admiral Vex pointed out. "Won't that destroy the entire network?" "Only if we had one plan," Thompson answered, her fingers flying over her console. "Initiating backup pattern Beta. Captain, we'll need to move the Prudence closer to strengthen the signal." Walker didn't hesitate. "Helm, take us in. Nice and easy." The alien leaders watched in amazement as the human ship carefully approached the dangerous anomaly. There was no dramatic charge, no battle cry. Just careful, precise movement. "They're not even using their weapons," Vex said in disbelief. "Because weapons aren't the answer to every problem," Krall replied quietly, beginning to understand. The Prudence's movement had an immediate effect. The backup pattern strengthened, compensating for the failed node. The anomaly's erratic behavior began to stabilize again. "Network integrity at 70% and holding," Miller reported. "The anomaly is accepting the new pattern." "It's more than accepting it," Thompson added with excitement. "Look at these readings. The original terraforming protocols are fully activating. It's starting to remember its true purpose." Walker watched the displays carefully. The massive void that had threatened entire solar systems was now pulsing in a steady, controlled rhythm. The purple-black color was shifting, becoming more organized, less chaotic. "This is what the anomaly was supposed to look like," Thompson explained to the watching alien leaders. "Not a destroyer of worlds, but a creator. The ancient ones built it to bring life to dead planets, not consume living ones." The crisis wasn't over yet. The network still needed careful monitoring and adjustment, but the worst had passed, not through heroic sacrifice or glorious battle, but through careful planning and multiple backup systems. "I think I understand now," Krall said slowly. "What we called cowardice was wisdom all along. Your backup plans had backup plans." Walker smiled slightly. "That's the human way. We survived as a species not by being the strongest or bravest, but by being the most careful, by always having another way out." The Prudence continued its delicate work, its crew focused and calm. They had faced a crisis that could have destroyed everything, and they had overcome it not with courage or strength, but with preparation and patience. 1 month after the crisis, the Galactic Council gathered again in their great chamber. This time, instead of fear and panic, a sense of wonder filled the room. The main hologram showed something beautiful, the transformed anomaly, now a shimmering field of creative energy, ready to bring life to dead worlds once again. Captain Walker stood at the center of the chamber, his crew beside him. Even now, they maintained their calm, professional demeanor. No boasting, no celebration of their victory, just quiet satisfaction in a job well done. The ancient terraforming system is fully stabilized. Dr. Thompson reported to the assembled aliens. It's now functioning as originally intended. Instead of consuming worlds, it can transform lifeless planets into habitable ones. And you're certain it's safe? Admiral Thex asked, her fur no longer bristling with worry. We've maintained constant monitoring for the past month, Miller answered. All readings are normal. The backup systems we installed will prevent any future malfunctions. Council Leader Krall rose from his seat, his metallic scales gleaming in the chamber's light. When we first called the humans for help, many of us thought we were desperate. We called them cowards because they wouldn't fight, because they insisted on studying, planning, and being careful. He paused, looking around the chamber. We were wrong. What we saw as cowardice was something else entirely, something we have forgotten in our love of glory and battle. Commander Vex stepped forward, his wings folded respectfully. They showed us that true courage isn't about rushing into danger. It's about finding the wisest path forward, no matter what others might think. Walker shook his head slightly. We're not particularly brave or wise, he said. Humans are survivors. We learned our caution through countless close calls and near disasters. Every backup plan exists because something once went wrong. Every safety check comes from a lesson learned the hard way. Yet you saved us all, Krall responded. When our mighty fleets failed, when our bravest warriors fell, your careful plan succeeded. Thompson brought up new readings on the hologram. The terraforming system is ready for its first test. We've identified a dead world in an uninhabited system. If the Council approves, we can demonstrate its restored function. The alien leaders looked at each other. Once, they would have demanded to see immediate results, to witness the power of their discovery. Now they had learned a different way. What precautions have you taken? Admiral Thex asked. What backup plans are in place? Walker smiled slightly. The question itself showed how much things had changed. We have 3 layers of safety protocols, constant monitoring, and emergency shutdown procedures. We won't proceed unless everything checks out perfectly. Of course you do, Krall said, and there was respect in his voice now. That's the human way, isn't it? Always careful, always prepared. It's how we survived as a species, Walker explained. Humans aren't the strongest, fastest, or most advanced race in the galaxy. We survived because we learned to be careful, to plan ahead, to always have another way out. The Council voted unanimously to approve the test, but only after reviewing all safety measures in detail. The warrior races that had once rushed into battle now asked careful questions about backup systems and emergency protocols. As Walker and his crew returned to the Prudence, Krall walked with them to the docking bay. You've changed how we see the galaxy, he said. Perhaps there are times when the cautious path is the wisest one. Walker nodded. There's an old human saying, discretion is the better part of valor. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take your time, study the problem, and find the safest way forward. The Prudence departed the Council station, its mission officially complete, but its impact would last far longer than the crisis it had solved. The warrior races of the galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. True strength isn't about fighting every battle, but about knowing which battles to fight, and how best to fight them. In the end, it wasn't courage or might that saved the galaxy. It was caution, preparation, and the wisdom to take things slowly. The very traits that had once earned humans the mockery of other races had proven to be their greatest strength, and now, perhaps, one of their greatest gifts to the galaxy.